Hello, welcome to the Comics Panel. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about fantasy comics. All right, we're here with our good pal Austin, and who reads a lot of fantasy books, and I read fantasy books too, so we're going to talk about fantasy comics. And you want to start off?
What kind of fantasy books is your favorite to read, or what are you reading right now?
I like reading almost any kind of fantasy. Right now I'm reading Grimm's Fairy Tales by Zenescope. The covers are kind of risque, but the artwork and the storyline inside is really good.
Now, I know from looking at previews and being at stores, Grimm Fairy Tales has a lot of selections to choose from. Is there a favorite one that you like?
I like the main story just called Grimm Fairy Tales. And it started off as standalone issues that actually had this lady who had this book, and she'd go and teach people like moral lessons using the Grimm Fairy Tales. And up around issue 25 or so, it started actually getting into a long storyline. I think it went up to issue 125 before it ended.
Andy, for people that are new to comics or fantasy stuff, do you want to explain to them what the Grimm Fairy Tales are if they're not familiar with that?
Well, the Grimm Fairy Tales have been around for a couple hundred years anyway. They were written by the Brothers Grimm in Germany, and they were basically folk tales, and we're all familiar with them. If you've ever seen a Disney movie, you've probably seen a Grimm Fairy Tale. Beauty and the Beast, Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, you name it. Practically The Little Mermaid. So many things that were Grimm Fairy Tales. And these were just folk tales that were meant to teach a lesson. And they were very appealing to everybody. They had great illustrations, and they were first printed in Germany, and then they just went worldwide and became...
Right. So, Austin, are there any other ones that you liked reading other than the Grimm Fairy Tales from the Grimm line?
From the Grimm line,
any of the one-shots?
They have a Van Helsing one where they just had Van Helsing versus Frankenstein, Van Helsing versus Dracula. They haven't done Wolfman yet. I'm hoping they do Wolfman. But that's been really like 5-issue miniseries.
Very cool. Are there any other fantasy titles that you're reading from other companies?
Well, Zenescope also does like the Jungle Book, which that's a very interesting series as well.
Based on the Rudyard Kipling books.
Yep. Back in the day, I used to like Thundercats, Ewoks.
Did you read anything of the werewolf stuff? You were telling me offline about Image had a werewolf title or something?
Image had Astounding Wolfman, written by Rob Kirkman. And that went like 25 issues. That was amazing.
Cool. Yeah,
that was really cool.
And you guys should know who Rob Kirkman is.
Everybody should know
The Walking Dead, yes. So, are there any other? Have you ever gotten involved in the whole ElfQuest stuff?
I did get involved in ElfQuest. The older stuff was really neat.
I remember it from being Marvel.
Yeah,
I remember that. I loved the artwork and the story. I know
it was done by Warp Graphics first, and then Marvel took over, and they were publishing it for a while.
I think Dark Horse is doing it now.
Dark Horse is doing it now.
I think Image had it at one point too. The newer stuff, the newer ElfQuest, I started getting, and it started getting confusing, so I dropped it a while back. But the older stuff was really neat.
The older stuff is definitely worth reading.
Yeah, and even the newer stuff, the artwork is amazing.
Yeah, Panini stuff is really good.
And weren't you? I think you were telling us earlier. It's a husband and wife team that's been writing that.
Husband and wife team that writes it and does the artist work with it.
It's really cool.
That is neat.
I remember reading it in Days of Marvel. Just going through, and it's like, oh wow, this is so cool.
They had a whole bunch of titles there for ElfQuest for a while, and now we're down to just one. So
the Final Quest.
And this may be very well the final quest of
it probably is. They're both getting up there in age, so it very well could be the final quest.
So, it never ends, though.
Someone might take over it.
Somebody will take over. Marvel will own it then. Yeah, so that's really cool. So anything else? I see you've got a Star Trek T-shirt on, and we have talked in off camera a little bit about Green Lantern Star Trek. I know you're reading that.
Yes.
And you're a Green Lantern fan, so
I'm a Green Lantern fan, and I'm also a Star Trek fan. So
did you like the Star Trek Green Lantern crossover?
I did like it.
There's been 2 of them, isn't there?
Well,
There's
they're
the
doing the
second
second
one
one now.
Yeah.
And just to let the people know, so there, if you're a fan of the old Star Trek and you pick it up and you say, "Oh, Star Trek Green Lantern," it is not William Shatner, it is the Chris Pine version, and everybody.
It did take me a little while to get past that, but I've adapted to understanding Chris Pine's the new Star Trek.
So earlier when we were talking, does anybody from the crew get a ring?
There are some members of the crew that get a ring, as well as some enemies of the Federation.
So can you give us one person that gets a ring? Tell us who gets the ring.
One person gets a ring is Bones McCoy.
Really?
Yes.
I can't. Damn it, Jim! I'm a doctor, not a ring slinging superhero. What ring would he get a hold of?
You have to read the book to
I'm gonna
find
have to
out. I
find
don't want to
out.
give too many spoilers here.
I wonder if he'd be
Well, I know a
compassionate
Klingon
'cause
gets
he's
a red ring.
A Klingon, I think a Romulan gets a yellow ring.
Okay.
But aren't the doctors supposed to be compassionate? Does he get compassion? I don't know. I'm gonna have to.
Indigo.
I'm
Hope.
gonna have,
Blue.
yeah, I'm gonna have to look.
I didn't read it either.
He had a
I
blue
don't know.
shirt. I'm gonna have to get this book now because I own the graphic novel. It's in my pile to read because the artwork looked great. I can't find all 6 issues. I was impatient, so I bought the graphic novel. Then I found all 6 issues, and I said, "Should
Son
have,
of a gun.
I should have waited longer." So it is in my stack of stuff to read, my pile of preparation.
When you're done,
so,
I'd
yeah.
like to borrow it too.
Yeah, the artwork looks great. I did not get the second one yet.
Well, I just like the idea that, the cosmic space force that's out there that is the Lanterns and their enemies is now matched up with the Federation.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me. So.
It went over well because they're doing a second one. And
Well,
the second
they
one
didn't
looks
really
good.
end the universe, so they just kept the universe going with the 2 companies merged.
Now, speaking of that, and along with the whole fantasy realm and Green Lantern, is that in previews are coming up with DC as all the Hanna-Barbera. So now Green Lantern's teaming up with Space Ghost.
I did
Cool.
see that in previews.
And hopefully it'll be the cool Space Ghost.
Yeah.
I hope so. Not
The one that's in Future Quest. I
Yeah.
like
Yes.
the Space Ghost. It's Future Quest is a good book.
And they're doing a whole bunch of other crossovers with the fantasy characters and the Hanna-Barbera characters. Booster Gold is in one of them. I think he
Wow.
meets Flintstones. So like, there's a. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. But Booster Gold's back. I mean,
I
Of
like
course he
character
is.
you don't hear that much about
Of
anymore.
course he's back.
I like these DC crossovers. They did Batman with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as well.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
well written.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that.
Heroes in a Half Shell.
Yep.
So if you were to give somebody along the lines of fantasy, intergalactic, cool stuff to read, what would be your top 2 recommendations for people to read?
Currently, I think you'd almost have to go with one of the Xenoscope titles, although that's not for kids. That's
No,
definitely
not really.
more adult.
Any particular one, just a basic Brother Grimm's, or is there a
I'd
couple
probably go
one
with
shots that you really like?
I like the Jungle Book series.
The Jungle Book
Yeah,
series.
they're mini series. They're easy to remember. They're kind of classic,
Everybody likes the jungle. So
Yeah,
if you
everybody
said the
likes the
Jungle Book's
jungle.
good, definitely worthwhile.
and it
check
has
it out.
talking animals. So how can you go wrong?
That's true.
Animosity is another fantasy one where animals actually gain conscience, and they talk to humans and everything. That's pretty cool
And
too.
who's doing that book? Do you remember?
I do not remember who's doing that
I
one at the
think our
moment.
producer gets that one.
Yeah.
Animosity.
It'll pop up.
It'll pop up.
It'll pop
Okay.
up.
Just watch the screen. It'll show. But yeah, I heard.
There it is.
I heard a lot of good things about that too,
Yeah.
and it's one of these books that'd be worthwhile to check out. So don't overlook fantasy, people. There's a lot of great stuff out
There's
there,
fantastic stuff in fantasy.
Oh yeah, and it goes back years and decades. And
and the artwork in most of the fantasy books that I've seen are fantastic.
It's usually really good. With what I've noticed with fantasy books is you get a little bit broader variety of artists instead of just guys that do strictly superhero stuff. I mean, some of my favorite artists do nothing but fantasy. Charles Vess, Michael Kaluta, them guys, they really don't do superhero books, but their art's fantastic and,
Indeed.
really neat stuff.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us and
Yes.
making
Thank
our
you
first.
for having
very
me.
much.
These are
Yes.
fantasy experts. So it's
All
awesome
right.
to have you here. So, anything else we want to add?
I think that's about it.
I think
All
we're
right.
good.
All right. Well, check us out on Facebook or like us.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Live long and prosper. We need to do a show about Dazzler.
We just did a show on Dazzler.
I miss Dazzler.
Yeah.
I really like Dazzler.
We all do.
Everybody
Everybody
loves
loves
Dazzler.
Dazzler.
See ya.